My name's Will Sinclair, and I used to be a people pleaser. And also, why should you calm your mind? This is episode 45.
Welcome to the show.
Well, welcome to the show. My name's Will Sinclair, and this is episode 45 of The Real Truth About You. This is a show where we try to help you to become the best that you can be by discovering the real, the true, the inner you. So, like I said at the start, I used to be a people pleaser. And I think, in fact, to some degree, I still am. And it's already translated into other versions of things like, I have to be right. I have to be doing the right thing. I can't do the wrong thing. And I work really hard to do the right thing in my life. And so how did I get to that point in my life? And also, we're going to be talking a little bit about the reason why you want to calm your mind. And I'm going to be giving you some examples of that. And something that I came up with that actually, I think, demonstrates it quite well. And it came at a time when I was meditating. But anyway, people pleasing. Maybe you can relate to this, and maybe not. Maybe you're not a people pleaser like this. And But I definitely was, and I think when I was a child, okay, if going back, how did this come about? Well, basically, it came about because I was abused a lot as a kid. I would go to school and I would get beat up. Here's this little dark-colored kid in Britain and Scotland, and prejudice back then was quite rampant. I think it is today still. But anyway, back there wasn't a lot done about it. There wasn't a lot of stuff about bullying in school. And anyway, I used to get beat up at school, and this is not the story about that, but this is the story of what came from that. I used to get beat up at school, and so I'd be beat up physically and emotionally, and then also I'd go home and I'd get similar at home. It was just the way it was. It's our home, I used to say, it was a place where love and abuse coexisted. And I know my mother, who was my main abuser at the time, who I love very much, she's actually passed on now, but we've done a lot of reconciling. And it was just where she was at the time. She didn't know any better. But anyway, so it was all my self-confidence was stripped away. Who I was stripped away from me. And I found myself always trying to seek attention and trying to seek love. And I found myself, the love that I received almost feels like a conditional love. There was a lot of mind games at home, and it was like you had to play this game to be loved. I'm pretty sure my mom just loved me, and my dad too, loved me anyway, but the way I interpreted it, and the way I saw it, and the way I look back, and your mind always plays tricks on you. But the way I interpret it was that I had to earn love. Love had to be earned. And so I would do whatever I had to do to gain that love and to gain acceptance. And that translated outside of my family life. It became everybody, almost. If you want attention in life, then you have to gain attention. I remember playing in bands and music groups and stuff like that, and touring and doing outlandish things. I would jump off the stage playing a guitar solo, and I would wear my clothes inside out. I would do all kinds of things, anything that got me attention. And when I was a kid, I used to try to be really funny, because I found when I was funny, people looked at me. And people laughed, or I gained acceptance and that kind of stuff. And I'm still kind of like funny today. People roll their eyes, my wife rolls my eyes at me a lot of the time. But back then it was definitely to gain acceptance. And I remember a friend saying, why do you have to be funny all the time? Like, why do you have to turn everything into a joke? And that was why, because it was part of my coping skills. It got built into my ego that funny people get noticed. And I also, when I found out when I was a teenager and I strapped a guitar around my neck, then people paid notice. People paid attention. I remember going into a lounge, a bar, and it was all these biker guys, and one of my friends was playing in a band, and nobody paid any attention to me. And he invited me up on stage, and I did a guitar solo, and all of a sudden, everybody paid attention to me. I was coming off, and people would buy me drinks and offer me narcotics. Oh, dear. And all kinds of things like that. So it gained me attention, and I think that's why I went so big into the music industry as a teenager and then later as a young adult. But it was to gain that acceptance, and that's what I thought. Right? I got very good at reading people because I had to read people. I had to look and see, okay, how can I be accepted by this person? Or this person's kind of looking at me funny, and I got to interpreting that kind of thing. Maybe I got paranoid to some degree. But I became this people pleaser. I really needed the acceptance of people. I needed to be loved by people. And I'm not saying people didn't love or accept me for who I was, because I'm sure they did. But my interpretation of life was that I need to be this person. I need to be this person who's accepted and loved. And to get that, my interpretation was that I had to be good at something, or I had to be noticed. When I played music, I got very good at it, because the better you were, the more you got noticed. And that's a lot of the way the world seems to work these days, and the way we set things up. Even when you look at the Olympics or sports, they're the biggest things. The best, the cream, and we talk about things like the cream rises to the top. And so we feel like to be the best, to be good, we have to be good. We can't just be. And it took me a long time before I could just start being me. Just being, I guess is the word. And I am 57 now. This is February actually of 2017. And I'm 57 now. And it's taken me almost since my childhood to now to realize that I can just be. And whether people accept me or love me is irrelevant. I can just be, because I'm in harmony with my God. I'm at one with my God, or at least I'm on that journey as far as I can understand, as far as I can feel, as far as I can know. So I'm at peace with myself that way. And I'm not saying that today I still don't do things for acceptance. Like I actually... The funny thing was, my wife said, you got to go get your eyes checked. And believe me, after having cancer 2 years ago, and the amount of doctors I've been to and specialists and for all kinds of things, and even through my diabetes, going to a specialist, I'm sick of going to doctor appointments. I'm really grateful that I'm in a country in Canada where I can go, where I can do that, where I can get sick of being with doctors and traveling 2 and 3 hours to go see a doctor. I am so blessed to be in a country where I could say that, I'm sick of going and seeing doctors, when there's so many places in the world where you can't do that. So don't get me wrong. I do feel blessed, and I am really blessed that I can do this. But anyway, so my wife said, but you haven't been to an optometrist. Go get your eyes checked. You haven't had them checked for a while. So I went to the optometrist yesterday morning. Where I live, they only come in once a week, 1 day a week. And so I went and got my eyes checked. And of course, they sell glasses. And I need glasses, and especially more for computer work and writing. I'm writing a lot these days. But anyway, I get to the optometrist takes me out of the room, and they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing. They sell glasses, right? So they come in and they have a glasses technician, or whatever you call her, specialist they call her, And anyway, she takes my prescription and escorts me to where they sell the glasses, not even asking me if I would like glasses. She just kind of tells me about it. And so I'm sitting there with this girl, and she's saying, so she's checking me out and for glasses. We're trying on glasses and frames, I should say, and we're just checking them out. And so I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, she's saying, and I'm not sure, like, because of the price, right? It's $300 or whatever it was. And I'm not sure about this. And I feel a little coerced, of course, right? And my wife is not there. She's home sick. And she's usually one of my checkpoints. And so I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't want to say no to this girl because she might be like, oh, okay. Oh, you just want your prescription and want to go somewhere. Oh, okay. And it was just all these feelings came back of being a people pleaser. And in the end, I ended up calling my wife first, and she says, you know what? You always get your glasses from your optometrist, because I've had glasses before. And she says, that's how you roll. So just roll with it and just go with it. And so I did. But it was funny because I was sitting there, and at one point I had said to the girl that I need to check. I'm going to check with my wife first. And it wasn't because I needed her permission. It was almost like I needed her reassurance that I'm okay to go ahead and do this, because I was doubting myself, and maybe I should be going somewhere where it's cheaper or blah, 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 blah. But that's not how I seem to roll. And when she says, oh, you're not taking them today then? And it was like all these feelings kept flooding back of being a people pleaser. And I thought, oh my gosh, there's still some work. But the thing is, I don't actually have to really do anything about it. The mere fact that I can tell you about it and I became aware of it, that's part of the process of healing. That's part of the process of growth. But being a people pleaser, I was very much, I had my opinions, but if somebody else said something, I always tended to play both sides of the fence. Like, so if somebody was one way and somebody else was opposing and I was kind of in the middle, then I would pick both sides. And if somebody says, oh, this is, and it was the same, about the same topic, or somebody's talking about somebody else, and I would join in and I would try to align myself with that person that's saying has one viewpoint. And then when I come to the other person who has an opposing viewpoint, I would do the same thing. I would adopt their opposing viewpoint because my goal was to be loved and liked. And if I was stepping out of my boundary zone and I was stepping out and I'm going to do something, I'm going to take charge of my life or this, that, the next thing, and I would make a decision to do something in my life. And then if somebody said to me, I think you're heading down the wrong path. Yeah, you really don't want to be doing that. Then I would stop. I would say, okay, you must be right. And I want to be right because I need acceptance. And I would follow that path and I would listen to that. And it's only lately that I've started to really, in the past few years, as I got into meditation, as I got into the depths of my being, as I started to become one more, like not one more, I became more aware of my oneness with God, my God, and with the universe around me, with nature around me, and started realizing that oneness and that connection with everything, and that I don't have to be anything. I don't have to do the right thing. Even if I do the wrong things, I am still loved. I am still who I am. I am still part of this oneness that is the beauty of God. I am still beautiful inside, and you are the same. And maybe you know somebody who's like this. They play both sides of the fence and sometimes don't even realize it. And I'm not accusing, I'm not judging. That's not what this is about. This is about the awareness of being a people pleaser, the need to please. And really, if you look at the need, it's not a need to please. It's not a need to be liked. What the craving is love and acceptance. That's what you're craving. And that's what a people pleaser does. It leads people to manipulate whatever they have to do to be loved and to be accepted. So anyway, I'm coming to that point now where I'm not that way so much, and people are telling me, even with my podcasts, I've had people telling me I'm heading down the wrong path, or my thought process is wrong, and things like that. And lots of people are telling me how great, how free they're feeling, and all this kind of stuff. So, I mean, what I'm doing now is what I'm doing. I'm being who I'm being. I am just being, right? And as you meditate, as you get into the depth of who you are, you reach the depths, getting closer to God. I'm getting tongue-tied here. Getting up closer is not really getting closer to God, to your divine, to the universe. It's becoming more aware, because you already are there. You're already there. You're already one with everything, one with the universe, one with that tree that's outside your house. You're one with the grass. You're one with the earth. You're one with the stars. You're one with God. And I'm not belittling God, because I believe God created all things, brought all things into life. And it's being one with God that I am one with everything and one with everyone else. And I'm already there, but my awareness of it has become more evident. My awareness of the love has become more evident. That I always thought I had to do something. I always thought I had to be something to be accepted and loved, even by God, even by my divine. I felt I had to be somebody that was purposeful in life and doing something and making things happen. And I've been learning to just sit and to know. And I'm not saying that God gives cancer and God gives diseases, but it's like my spiritual director, Barb Wright, says. She says, that God uses that. And what it did for me is it forced me to sit still. It forced me into a position where I couldn't go out and just do what I wanted. I couldn't go out and be the go-getter. I couldn't be the one who's the head of the group and just getting it done, which is what I'm accustomed to. Partly because that's the way I seem to be wired, but also partly because I needed to be accepted and loved by other people. So I did things all the time. Did, do. I am this, I am that. And I clothed myself with so much falsities is what it is. It's my ego. And ego, remember, I've told you, ego is a good thing. It gets you up in the morning, gets your teeth brushed, gets your hair done, But if you let your ego define you and validate you, then you're in a tricky course, right? Because you're it's like waves of the ocean. They're all over the place. And that's where you'll end up, all over the place. When you center yourself on the truth of God, of your divine, then you're setting yourself on a solid foundation, a solid reference. And that reference is already in you. That oneness, that love, everything's already in you. You don't have to go anywhere else for it. You don't have to do anything for it. You don't have to buy anything for it. It's already there. We just have to learn how to uncover it, because we have covered it up over our life. And then our ego, which, is trying to make sense of the world around us, tries to emulate that beauty that's inside, tries to emulate the love of God that's already in you, that peace, everything. It tries to emulate that through other means, and it can never be a copy. Your ego can never be a copy. It'll never be it'll just be a copy. It'll never be the real thing. And wouldn't you rather have the real thing? So I've discovered this path through meditation, through silence, and I want to tell you something about, I watched, I'm a bit of a sci-fi geek, not for all shows, but mostly like things like Star Trek, which it's all reruns now. But there was a Star Trek Voyager show on, and they were caught in a place called, the episode's called Night, And they were caught in an area of space called the void, or they called it the void, because there was nothing there. They couldn't see anything. It was just blackness, darkness, and it was just still. It was quiet. There was no spaceships to fight, no aliens to rescue, no nothing. It was just like silence, quiet, empty space. And one thing it showed at the beginning is how unsettled the crew was, and even Catherine Janeway, locked herself basically in her quarters because she couldn't handle it. She's a person who had to do all the time. And one thing that came up for her was she realized, and the whole premise of this Star Trek Voyager series is all these episodes as they got stranded in a whole. It's called the Delta Quadrant of space. It's like millions and millions and millions of miles from home. I don't even know how they measure it. But it would take them years upon years to try and get back to Earth. And they got stranded in this quadrant. And during this quiet time on the ship where they were in this void, the realization that she was the one that made the decision that ended them stranded up in the Delta Quadrant and on this long journey that might take them 75 years to get home. And she blamed herself during this period. It was 3 months they were in this black void. And she was so uncomfortable with it. And finally, they detected another spaceship. And back she was in action. She says, finally something to put in my log. And she was back into action, and she suppressed whatever. There was nothing left of that emotion. She just suppressed it, or whatever she did with it. But that's what silence does. Silence allows things that you've used to cover up the real you, the real love, the real inner peace, the inner strength, the inner joy. It's only through silence and quieting your mind that these things can come up. And then you don't have to necessarily do anything about them, because what they are is God telling you, here's this issue you've stuffed, right? Oh, you're feeling, she was pouting, Captain Janeway was pouting about this. It was my fault. She was blaming herself, right? So she was living in that rather than observing it, right? Rather than observing the fact that she was blaming herself. Somebody else saw that. Her first officer or whatever, Chakotay, he saw that. He saw she was blaming herself. But she needed to see that she was blaming herself. And she needed to see all these emotions that were coming up. And when you see those, automatically, you've moved to a new level of consciousness. Eckhart Tolle talks about being the silent observer of your thoughts. It's where you could be thinking something, and a lot of times we just sit and we think about things, and we don't realize we're thinking about them. We're so living in the thought that we don't realize that we're actually thinking about it. We're just thinking about, like if I was thinking about my job and my career, and I'm just sitting thinking about where I am, where I've been, and all that stuff, and I think, well, gee, I wonder if I should do this, or I should do that, or if and you start to think about it, or I wonder about retirement. And you don't really think, you're thinking about it, right? But you're not thinking, you're not seeing yourself thinking about it. When you can take a step back and you can say, oh, I'm thinking about retirement. I'm thinking about that. I can actually see myself almost thinking that thought, that I'm concerned about my job. And you become aware that you're concerned about your job or your security or whatever. And it's that observation that moves you to a whole new level of consciousness. And it's the process of quieting your mind. I'm going to do something right now. And if you're listening with headphones, you may want to turn your volume down a little bit, because I don't know in the end. I'm going to do some editing and I'll adjust the volume and things like that. So you might be okay. But I'm going to try and do something, and I'm going to clap into the microphone and speak at the same time, because I want to show you something, okay? And so I'm going to do this. I'm just going to back up for a little bit, and then I'm going to start clapping. And while I'm clapping, I'm going to be talking, all right? So here I go. I'm just backing up a little bit. Okay, I'm backing away. Now I'm going to clap, and I'm going to talk. Here we go, all right? I'm going to count down just so you know you're not panicking, going, oh my gosh. All right, here we go. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Now, I want to talk to you about something that's really important, because one of the things I want to tell you is about life and about love and how much you're loved. Okay. Are you still with me, or have you turned it off already? Yeah. Okay. So, what is that about? I don't know if you could. I'm going to listen back to this recording before I publish it, of course. But I was talking while I was clapping. You may have heard me talking. You may not have. The chances are slim you didn't hear it because you were so caught up with the clapping. Well, the clapping represents thoughts that are flying through your head every day. Thoughts that are in your mind every single day. I don't even know how many thoughts fly through in a 1 minute period. But those thoughts, like the clapping, are what are stopping you from hearing your inner self, from even hearing God. Because when your body speaks to you, when God speaks to you, rather than loud, thunderous things, you're spoken to in like the sound of a butterfly wing flapping. They're tiny, it's quiet. And unless your mind is quiet, it's like the clapping. And it's so loud and so consistent that you fail to hear your body speaking to you. You fail to hear God speaking to you. If you're a Christian, there's a story in the Old Testament, which is before Jesus came. And there's a story about the prophet Elijah. And Elijah hears a message from God saying, I want to speak to you, so I want you to go into the desert. And he goes into the desert, and he sits by this tree, and God basically feeds him manna from heaven kind of thing. And then he continues on his journey, and he ends up coming to this cave. And the story goes basically like he's waiting to hear from God. And we always imagine God a lot of the times as being somebody powerful and mighty on a throne, ready to speak with a booming voice, something loud. And so he was waiting for this loud voice of God and for this important message. And what happened was, it was basically this. I can't remember the exact order or what it was. It was like the earth shook and the ground trembled and it was loud, but it says that God wasn't there. And then it says that the thunder clapped and lightning and wind, but God wasn't there either. And after a few more things that were really big and loud and, mighty, he thought he'd hear the voice of God, and he didn't. And then it says a whisper, just a tiny whisper of air came into the cave, and God's voice was in the whisper. So if you imagine butterfly wings flapping, and you imagine my clapping that I was doing, which one are you going to hear most? It's going to be the clapping. And what each clap represented was a thought going through your mind. And what we're trying to do, like my daughter Michelle said, because I showed her the thing about the clapping, and she says, I get it. So it's like between the claps, you're trying to slow the clapping down so that between the claps you can hear. And that's exactly what it is. The space between thoughts where nothing happens in your mind. Remember, your mind is a tool. It's a beautiful, powerful tool. The mind is engineered technology that sent people to the moon. And I'm sure it's going to be even greater, the things that we can accomplish with our minds. And there's nothing wrong with your mind and using your mind. Our mind is there for a reason, but it is a tool. And like all tools, we need to put the tool down when we're done with it. And we need to connect with our higher power, with our God, with our divine, whatever you want to call God. I don't really think God cares. Somebody says God does. I don't think that's really the case. But can you hear a tree? Can you hear a blade of grass? Can you hear a butterfly? Those are the things that you need to quieten your life, yourself, your mind down to be able to hear. To hear your body. Somebody described placing your mind inside of your heart. Because it's the heart that really hears the body. Anyway, that is where you're going to find your peace. That is where you're going to find your inner joy. That's where you're going to find everything you've been looking for, the contentment. I've turned from a person who used to be super angry at life. I've turned from a person that used to be very unpeaceful, a person who was a people pleaser, into somebody who's more stable. I was watching a movie last night, and it was called The Minimalist, and it was on Netflix. And one of the guys, and I can't remember the guy's name, he was an anchor on Good Morning America or something, and he was an overseas correspondent and stuff. And anyway, he ended up having a breakdown in his life because he was going after doing. I'll be better when I do things better, right? The more popular I am, the better things will be in my life. And it never went that way for him. And he said that he ended up having an episode on live air in front of I don't know how many millions of people, and he basically cracked up, and he had a mental breakdown, and he ended up going to meditation. And I wish I could remember his description of that. He says, "I'm 10% happier," and he's actually got a book called 10% Happier, right, through meditation and reconnecting with himself. And he says, my wife will say, like I say I'm 10% happier, my wife will say, yeah, he's only 90% a jerk now. And I thought it was just so funny. It was so real life. But anyway, meditation and quiet is the process of quieting your mind, right? Not shutting your mind off, but quieting your mind so that you can hear yourself, hear your body, hear the nature around you, hear your God. And so anyway, I'd encourage you to take that time. One of the best ways to do is sit down, relax, sit up, listen to yourself breathe. Listen through your nose. Listen as the air goes through your nostrils. Breathe out through your mouth. Breathe in deep and out. And then just do that. And I guarantee you, when you can do that, when you can listen to your breathing, you won't hear all the other thoughts going on in your head. You can't do both. And if all of a sudden you're way off and thinking about something and you realize you're thinking, hey, the mere fact that you realize you're thinking something else has brought you to a new level of consciousness. That's the silent observer that Eckhart Tolle talks about. The silent observer of your mind. Anyway, thanks for tuning in today. I've gone past the half hour, 33 minutes already. Anyway, thank you so much for listening. You are such a blessing to me. You just being here is such a blessing to me. And thank you so much for listening in. I'm Will Sinclair. The show is The Real Truth About You. You can go to therealtruthaboutyou.com and get more downloads. Would you do me a favor? If you don't subscribe, why don't you subscribe on iTunes, Google Play, on Android, whatever you need. It really helps the show become more popular because it gets promoted more when I get more subscribers. And that would be an awesome thing. I've never really asked people to subscribe that way, but it would be awesome if you did. Share this message with anybody. Remember, you are loved. You are loved. You are loved. Okay? I'm Will Sinclair. Thanks for tuning in to The Real Truth About You. And until the next episode 46 coming up, you absolutely rock.